But I thought I would spend 3 minutes at the start, in some sense, justifying or motivating why we're having a conversation about a sustainable growth strategy for India. And the reason I want to motivate that is often when we have panels or discussions of this kind, someone will come up to me after the event and say, well, India is a very poor country. We will worry about sustainability when we get richer. And this narrative, which I like to call the sort of paralyzing narrative of the environmental Kuznets curve, comes from, if you look at the curve on the right, it comes from the observation that for many environmental outcomes, richer countries look cleaner than poorer countries. And so the argument is, well, as we get richer, we will get cleaner. Let's focus, single-mindedly on getting rich. And, in some sense, this is a kind of curious conclusion because it depends very much on whether we think of environmental outcomes as kind of a side effect, a sort of bonus luxury good that you get when you get richer, or whether we think of them as an input to growth. If you drew this kind of curve, it would look exactly the same if you were doing it for roads and wealth. But we all understand that roads are an input to growth, not an accidental outcome. And so really the one part of this question is, if India's growth today comes at the expense of environmental assets, will growth tomorrow be harder? And which of these two ways of looking at the environmental Kuznets curve makes more sense? Now, speaking as an academic, I think the argument that environmental inputs, environmental pollution, environmental quality is an input to growth is getting harder to ignore. So these are two figures from two recent academic papers. The first one on the left shows worker productivity with an increasing number of day exposure to high pollution. And the bottom line is, the more you're exposed to pollution, the less productive you get. This is in Chinese firms. The figure on the right is cognitive performance in test scores with exposure to air pollution. And again, what you see is that on both mathematics and verbal scores, this is again from China, people do worse when it's more polluted. So it's hard to grow an economy if your workers are less productive or their cognitive performance is worse. And then there's a particular state which I'm really going to leave to Dr. Ravi to talk a little bit about, but it's a sort of very striking example. Is the formerly richest state in India, the state of Punjab. And there are two things about Punjab, there are two striking features. This is a largely agricultural state, the blue line, that went from being the richest in India to now very much in the middle of the pack, with growth that is significantly slower than many states of its size that were poorer than it. It is also the part of India where groundwater depletion today is at a level that has never been seen in history and has never been seen like this anywhere else across the world. And so you might want to ask the question, are these two facts related, and does this have something to do with how Punjab has chosen to grow?